Hi, welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything that's happening there and then realizing that we're only talking about the comics universes and not the cinematic ones, and that all these different universes with all their different multiversal crises have all gotten a little bit out of hand? Don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, the men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are actually leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little more than you did and can up your nerd cred. I'm your casual host, Cece. I fully contend that Sailor Moon could beat Goku in a fight. I'm not afraid to say it. She's too nice to do it all willy-nilly, but she doesn't play. No, Sailor Moon could absolutely beat Goku.
And I'm your standard nerd host, Am Diaz, a cosplaying geek who is the guy dropping so much unnecessary extra details about characters you've probably never heard of. And unlike all my friends, you can hit the fast forward button if I go on too long.
I have never hit the fast forward button on you.
But you've wanted to. I know it.
Okay, I mean, yes, it would be nice if there was like a, 1.5x speed situation button that I could push, but I want to push that for everybody. Wish people would move faster. That's really like the most annoying part of ADHD, is the fact that people are sometimes just so slow to bounce to like the various random things that you're thinking about. And that's because other people are going logically A, B, C, D, and I'm going A, L, Q, S. Anyway, the important part is that our expert here he ain't new to it. All right, he's true to it. So as our expert nerd, I ask him burning questions each week. But what's first, though, is what are we nerding out about this week? Now, as a reminder, listeners, you can nerd out about all kinds of things. It does not just have to be heroes and villains. I mean, your TV show has layers. There's absolutely some royal that is currently hooking up with someone they're not supposed to. I don't know who, but I'm sure it's actually happening. And also, I think we can all cite a Cartoon Network for highlighting Garnet during Pride Month, but then specifically canceling Steven Universe because of her wedding episode. So,
sad.
Yeah. What are you nerding out about this week?
Well, I'm particularly excited about the upcoming Ironheart series that is finally going to be arriving on Disney Plus, I believe?
Yeah, I believe it's coming out on the 20th.
It's so hard to keep it straight because they kept bouncing all these different shows on movies or Disney Plus. But I am just excited that we are finally going to be getting Riri Williams front and center. We have not seen her since Black Panther 2. Mm-hmm. Where she did make a nice splash, but since it wasn't her movie, she did not quite get the focus we were hoping for, especially for those of us who are fans of the Champions and of Ironheart herself.
I'm pretty sure that Namor is the one who actually made the splash in that one, but also, also, I want to make sure that we are all pointing out with Ironheart as well is the fact that she is, ooh, look at that child with no love. Okay,
booty.
Those are some Dick Grayson shorts right there.
They could be shorter.
You could bounce a quarter off of those.
He's supposed to be wearing a Speedo, thank you. But you were saying.
I completely lost track of what I was talking about. There is a whole Speedo. What was I saying?
I don't know. That's what happens when Namor comes on screen.
Yeah. Yeah, Riri Williams actually, as a character, is very specifically created as Ironheart, as this black lady. There's a whole bunch of people who are sitting there getting so mad, like, boo, she's not Iron Man, like, she's like a fake Iron Man, like, why are we, like, shoving, like, this diversity in, blah, 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 despite the fact that, like, they're like, these same people are the same ones who are just like, oh, you need to, like, create your own characters and then get that kind of thing. Okay, well, guess what? Riri is, as a character, isn't she, like, on, like, Shuri's level? Like, Riri and Shuri are currently just, like, trying to battle for, like, who's, like, the smartest in the MCU.
I mean, it varies on, like, the intellect levels in Marvel is constantly shifting and changing. I would put a Riri up there, probably pretty close to Shuri, but Shuri does have all that Wakanda technology.
Okay, so basically you're just saying like give Riri a little extra time in Wakanda and then she's gonna
Well, it's
catch
like she's
up.
still, yeah, she's still relatively, I mean, she's a super smart character, but she's, hasn't had the access to the advanced tech that Shuri has.
That's fair.
But let's be honest, all of them will still kind of pale in comparison to a certain Moon Girl.
I mean, look,
I mean, even Reed Richards looks at Moon Girl and goes, "I'm out."
I don't have a dinosaur. So, but
Side note, boo Disney for canceling Moon Girl and for hiding that trans episode of her cartoon series. I'm sorry, I can't forgive you guys for that.
they like to hide a lot of trans episodes for things. Cycling back to Sailor Moon, remember that they didn't show stars at all in the US because the Sailor Starlights posed as boys and then they switched back to their normal self, which were girls, and everybody was just like, oh no, we can't have that, stateside. But also, this is the same people who made Neptune and Uranus cousins, and I'm just like, you guys are making this actually way nastier than them being
Yeah,
lesbians.
we went from lesbians to possible incest. So
Like, choices.
good choice there.
Yeah, well, I get either way.
I
The
mean, I just
important
imagine
part,
some people in the South were really on board with that.
I was
I'm
trying not to
joking.
say that, like,
I'm
I know
joking.
that
The
there's a
South,
lot of
Southern.
Alabama jokes, but this is there in Japan, it doesn't make any sense to try to switch anyway. The important part is that we all knew that they were being absolutely ridiculous with this, and I feel like to a certain extent, we all know that Bert and Ernie are not roommates. They just are in a situation in which one of them sleeps in one of them sleeps harder than the other. So they need to make sure that they have different like blanket situations going on. They have different beds because that's how that some couples like do better with separate beds.
We went on a tangent from Riri.
Look, yes, that's fair. Wait, isn't Riri is has Riri been assigned a sexuality yet though?
I'm not 100% certain. I'm thinking that she is aligning more straight or asexual.
Mm-hmm.
I know that she had a thing with the daughter of the Vision being in love with her or having a crush on her, but I don't think, took it quite well. But I
Yeah.
wasn't fully reading the Champions at the time, so I'm not 100% certain.
Well, ultimately, I'm sure that we'll find out a lot more about her when the show gets going.
It'll be
So,
interesting to see what they do, considering, yes, she's her own character, but she was in the comics heavily tied into Iron Man, to
yeah,
where her AI's program was Tony Stark.
now that's going to
So,
actually be really interesting to see how they pull that off.
yeah, I'm curious to see what they're going to do, like, especially also the fact that she's a very tech-based character.
Mm-hmm.
But rumors are having that a certain marriage stealing villain will be playing a part in this story. A throwback to last episode.
I'm trying really hard to not do a full church lady. Could it be Satan?
Satan?
But, all right, well, this is very exciting to see.
What are you
Well,
nerding out
that's
about?
what I'm excited about is Riri Williams. This is actually very cool. I'm more interested in Ironheart coming out largely because like I was really hyped when Sinners came out. Like at first I wasn't going to go see it, but everyone's like this is Ryan Coogler's movie and it's great. And I enjoyed both Black Panthers and then I saw Sinners and so pretty much anything that Ryan Coogler is involved with, similar to anything that Jordan Peele is involved with, I'm sad. I'm going to be there.
That's fair. Yeah, it's like like I say, it'll be interesting to see what he does with this story and this character.
I think it's going to be really cool. I think it's going to be really cool. So, but with that, we're going to take a quick break and we will be back to help up your nerd cred. Hi, welcome back to Up Your Nerd Cred. So, the question that's burning me up this week is this: which multisexual has had the most interesting dating life? So, it is the end of Pride month. We started Pryde in LA to kick off the month. We have Pryde in New York to end the month. It's been a lot. It's been a wild month and I'm really
Yep.
glad that we are moving into Wrath. But as we wrap up in this month, we are going to be starting to focus on the canon multisexuals who have dated some really interesting folks. Some minor housekeeping, though. I very specifically said multisexual because I am a long-term veteran of the bi versus pan wars. They're repetitive. They're annoying. Whatever it is that people are, they're all going to fall, like in this list, they're going to fall, generally speaking, under the multisexual umbrella. And in this case, it mostly just means that we've seen that the character in question has actively identified themselves as, not being monosexual, aka only swinging one way, like that
Hey,
one over there. Look, we're not going to get a bunch of comments now about whether we misidentified someone's specific flag colors that they'd wave at the parade.
that is technically engagement.
New plan, argue in the comments about which flag everybody would wave at the parade. Also, while I will give you the full introduction to the main folks that we're talking about, if I did that for every one of their partners, since we're talking about some multisexuals and their interesting relationships, it's gonna get annoying for everybody. So we're going to start with our Marvel multisexuals. So Katie Pryde, her government name is of course Catherine Ann Pryde, who was created by Chris Claremont and John Byrne. She made her debut in Uncanny X-Men number 129. Miss Pryde has a bit of a tendency to date Peters. A lot of Peters.
She's
How
up
many
to
Peters has
three.
she
Well,
dated?
technically 2 in the main universe. So she's baited. Or no, correction, 3. I forgot one. So first there was Piotr Rasputin, Peter Rasputin, a.k.a. Colossus of the X-Men.
Colossus!
Then here's another thing with Kitty. She's got a thing about dating older men. First there was Peter, who was probably about 4 or 5 years her senior. She was
Normal.
about 14. He was about 19.
No, that's not okay.
Yeah, so there's some debate on the accurate, what's going on there.
That's inappropriate.
Then,
Okay. Other Peter.
but more appropriate than her second Peter, Peter Wisdom of Excalibur. He was probably about 10 to 15, if not more, her senior.
Kitty, what is
Yeah.
going on with you and your daddy issues, girl? Get it together.
Well, she has a child of divorce, unfortunately, so
Plenty of children get divorced without, like, having to deal with, like, their man being 15. Anyway, who is the other
then Peter
Peter?
number 3 is everyone's favorite space bum, Peter Quill, Star-Lord. Another bisexual icon, actually.
That's true.
Yeah.
He's
He
not.
recently came out as more bisexual thanks to future time travel alternate universe shenanigans. Either way, but yeah, so Kitty's got those ones. She also, in an alternate universe, bagged herself a Peter Parker. In the alternate
Wow.
universe, her and Mr. Parker had a quite long thing together.
Okay, so I realized that we're probably not going to get the Kitty Pride that we had before, even if any kind of reunion things, because I feel like Kitty Pride is going to have a slightly different name and presentation since Elliot Page was the one who portrayed her last. But there's a few different interesting folks that could be portrayed in the universe, and I do think that it's going to be interesting. Like the conceit of Star-Lord as a bisexual. I wonder how Chris Pratt is feeling about that recent revelation. I'm sure he's fine. He's known for being tolerant and welcoming to everybody, right?
But going back to Kitty, meanwhile,
Yes, focusing on Kitty. I will
yeah,
say that Chris
her
Claremont,
recent,
though,
yeah,
has specifically mentioned that Rachel Summers is intended to be her truest love. And if you will recall from the conversation that we had a couple episodes back about when they were bringing people who were killed back, somehow along the lines, like she was canonically revealed to be multisexual and she was shown kissing a girl. So like cycle back to that. Like how does that cycle out?
Well, Chris Claremont always wanted to have queer characters in his books, but around the time this era, the comic code authority was still running rampant. So none of the gays. But Chris Claremont, God love that man. He doesn't take no well when it comes to his creations.
Mm-hmm.
So if you read a lot of his work, there is a lot of subtext and innuendo, especially with regards to Kitty's relationships. Rachel Summers was always there's always a lot of undertone with that.
Mm-hmm.
There was also Ilyana Rasputin,
Mm-hmm.
Kitty's best friend. There was a lot of implication of deeper feelings in a lot of the text.
Ilyana Rasputin is
A.k.a. Magic, the demon
right.
sorceress sister of Colossus.
I was gonna say, like, I'm pretty sure that there's not a lot of Rasputin names running around. Although technically, I feel like I think that Russian like women's names end in like this. Like, she wouldn't she be Rasputina or something? Anyway, that's a whole
Arguably, yeah.
separate issue. But so Ilyana, so both Peter and Ilyana, nice. She does what she
Mm-hmm.
likes.
They've never pulled the trigger on it because, the comic book authority, and then as the years passed, Ilyana got de-aged, got killed, got resurrected, as that happens in the comics. And Rachel, unfortunately, kind of fell into the same issue, was not allowed to really pursue anything with Kitty because, you know, comic code and all that. And then lost in time, assumed dead, brought back, disappeared. Kitty lost in space, so everybody's missing their chances.
I suppose the barrier gaze trope as a conceit is not technically it's not technically like the trope if they're lost in space, if rather than like dead.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases they died, in other ones, but because of the fact that a lot of them were not allowed to become canonically queer, it wasn't quite barrier gaze, but
Barrier
those of us,
queer baits.
yeah, those of us in the queer community still kind of view it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Kitty
So
also had a lot of other things, like Saturn during the Excalibur. There was a lot of questionable age, innuendo, romance going on there too.
So if I'm understanding right, there's like a whole bunch of stuff that like Katie had that's basically she's trying to figure out who it is that she like who am I? Like where do I fit into stuff? And like that's like a lot of her like kind of hangups and such.
Yes and no, because it was like they never really delved too much into her sexuality. They
Mm-hmm.
just had it to where it was like a lot of flirtatious, but she never seemed too like, oh, what does this mean about it?
Mm.
But with Kitty, a lot of times she's been reinventing herself for as long as everyone can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And when she finally came out as bisexual officially, it was during what we call the Marauders era, where Kitty had become a pirate.
I
And
mean,
yeah. So, and she basically was working as a transport for mutants who could not get to the island nation of Krakoa via the gates. So
oh, teleport
she would,
people.
yeah, the gates of Krakoa would teleport people between different parts of the world. But
Wait,
not
wasn't she
everybody
a
could.
phaser?
That's the thing. She could phase through solid matter. She could walk through walls, but her body would not work with the gates because of the way her powers worked. So she had to travel via boat or plane or other means. Well, I mean, it wasn't awful for her. Her best friend could teleport, so.
Yeah, but
But Kitty took on a ship, the Marauder. She brought Storm, Iceman, Pyro, and Bishop, and a few others, turned her into a crew, and they were going around the world delivering medicines to the other countries and saving mutants from persecution. Until
yeah,
Kitty
that
died and got
okay.
resurrected. She,
Again. How many
yeah,
times did she die? Like I feel like it was a few
Kitty hasn't
times that
died. That
she
Kitty hasn't died that many times. Honestly, she's been assumed dead a few times, but she's one of those that has honestly only really died once.
Okay.
Yeah, she
Well,
died. She was killed, but she was resurrected thanks to the resurrection protocols on Krakoa.
mhm.
But it took a while because her powers were kind of messing up her resurrection. And
Well, is it
to
because of
celebrate,
like the whole phasing thing?
yes, because of the fact that she phases, her resurrected body did not break out of the shell. So it wasn't until Emma Frost realized Kitty needed help getting out of the shell by convincing her to phase out of it, as opposed to trying to break out of it.
Okay.
It's complicated, but the
It's yeah,
important
this seems really involved.
it very much is. It was an ongoing story for Kay during this era. But the thing is, when she finally did get resurrected,
Hmm.
she opted to first plot the murder or torture of the man who did it to her, along with Emma Frost and Storm.
These are not unreasonable
Oh,
choices,
and
and
Lockheed.
these are and who?
And
Oh,
Lockheed the
her
dragon.
Lockheed the Dragon. Yes, I was gonna say like her
Because
drag. Like,
her
I,
killer did try to kill Lockheed also. So he also had a grudge.
isn't Lockheed Kitty's honestly like her actual true love though, to a certain extent?
Probably, yes.
So like her most stable
Yeah.
and enduring relationship.
But to celebrate also, she went to go get some tattoos.
Okay.
and then proceeded to kiss the tattoo artist.
I'm assuming that the tattoo artist is not some random dude.
No, a lovely young lady, but Kitty did not exactly make sure it was 100% okay, but the girl seemed receptive. But it's still just like, maybe not steal a kiss off of the person who's doing service work for you.
Yeah, we gotta stop the surprise kiss just like in general, and also like I hope that she tipped that lady real good because I would be really annoyed if you're just like, let me just come and invade your personal space while like I am providing
I'm
an
kind of
active
curious what the
service for
tipping
you.
policy in Madripoor is.
I mean, isn't this like a fairly lawless kind of area in general? I feel like
Yeah, but I mean, people still gotta work.
job is a job. That's fair. Speaking of jobs, how about the merc with a mouth for a fun canon multisexual who also doesn't really seem to be actually having a lot of male partners despite. So
Yeah,
like what's
so
up with that?
with Deadpool, we know that he is canonically pansexual or bisexual, multisexual. I'm not
I
even
think
sure he has a.
omnisexual, one of the things might be omnisexual. Just I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that we're not getting like yelled at for not having
Oh
the
no,
right flag
I'm.
color.
That's the reason. It's like with Deadpool, it's hard to pinpoint his sexuality in general
Yeah.
because he's had a lot of different partners of various types and stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, hell, he was hooking up with Death herself.
Yeah, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Actually, he was like in a love triangle with Death and Thanos. Like,
I wouldn't call it a love triangle. Thanos is just a simp who doesn't know when to take no for an answer.
well, so I mean, on that snap front though, he did like try to get rid of like half the universe to as like a present for her though, right?
Yeah, and she was just kind of like, honey, you're doing too much.
It's also worth noting the fact that Aubrey Plaza as Death in Agatha All Along. So now I'm just sitting there imagining Aubrey saying just like, you're weird. Like I know that like April Ludgate turning down Thanos is not quite the exact thing, but it's not
Let's be honest,
not.
April would turn down Thanos.
April would turn down Thanos.
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
yet,
with Deadpool.
wait,
Oh, yeah.
wait, but here's the problem though. April ended up with Star-Lord in Parks and Rec.
To
We
be
got to
fair,
keep those two apart.
she ended up with Andy, who is not,
Star-Lord. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, no. Actually that's the reason that he and Anna Faris split up because he switched from being an Andy to a Star-Lord and
Even Star-Lord was better than. But let's not be bad mouthing
let's ignore
celebrities right now.
he's not important.
Yeah.
So, other people though that Deadpool has been hooking up with besides Death, he was married to Orxa apparently. So he's just like
Hmm.
randomly marrying aliens by giving them a little kissy poo.
Yep. And he's, also like kind of pursued a little thing with Rogue for a little bit too.
Well, I mean, the two of them are going to be able to sit there, like, even if Rogue is like sucking away a whole bunch of his like gross to a
Yeah.
certain extent, he's gonna like the healing factor means he's just gonna keep coming back and doing more anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
didn't Rogue end up actually kind of gross from like making out with him a little bit too hard?
Well, yeah, she kind of absorbed some of his stuff too, but the thing was, you know, Rogue was in a weird place at the time, and Wade was offering her the kind of, I guess, support that she didn't feel like she was getting at the time.
Okay, but
But say what you will about Wade, it's like he is a very tried and true friend or partner. It's like he will stand by the people he cares about.
so yeah, like he's like currently he's marked as dating Valentine Wong, I believe, a non-binary assassin, which is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
But Wade has also given Mystique divorce papers, so he hooked up with Rogue's mom and had to give her divorce papers. That's awkward. That's a very
Well,
specific category on the hub.
to be fair, Mystique has married and dated a lot of people.
Yes. Well, she famously has that child with Destiny, who is that they said was Azazel's kid. Ultimately, our favorite furry blue elf.
Yep. We got Nightcrawler through very complicated history changes and retcons, but I know a lot of people have their issues, but I'm quite happy with how it's turned out.
Yeah, I respect that, but we're gonna have a conversation about what a terrible mother she is, but she's got a lot of just like kids from different places. Also, didn't she also produced Dakin, right? Who was another canon bisexual. Her and
No.
Wolverine's kid, I think. Who?
Dakin's mother was a Japanese woman that Wolverine had a relationship with.
Oh.
Yeah, no, Deke has had several kids. First off is Nightcrawler. That was a result of Mystique transforming into a man and impregnating her wife Destiny.
a.k.a. Irene Adler.
Yeah. This was also the original intent of Chris Claremont back in the day. He wanted Irene Adler, Destiny, and Mystique to be a queer couple and the biological parents of Nightcrawler, but once again, the Comic Code Authority got in the way, and Nightcrawler was retconned, well, let's say retconned, was made into being the son of Mystique and a German baron, which
Boo.
years later got retconned to her actually having an affair on the German baron with a biblical mutant named Azazel, which
The red guy from
the
the
red guy
first
from,
class?
uh-huh, which was a
I
choice,
mean, she's already
and
blue, so like I guess she can't be like picky about that kind of thing, but
yeah, but they did explain why he looked so much like Nightcrawler. Mystique was able to transform her body on the biological level and kind of took some of Azazel's genetics to give Nightcrawler his more teleporting tail and stuff like that aspects.
So we did technically forget to formally introduce Deadpool and Mystique. So Deadpool, his full government name is Wade Winston Wilson. He was created by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza. That's an Italian name. I am absolutely sure that I'm getting it wrong. I'm so sorry. I do not speak Italian. So Wade again, or Deadpool, came out in The New Mutants '98. Cover dated in for February of '91, but it was published in like December of 1990. And then Mystique, also known as Raven Darkholm, was created by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum. And her first appearance came out in Miss Marvel number 18 in July 1978. Chris Claremont really does like to have his canonically bisexual stars going
He
on.
very much does, yeah. And I mean, he made a very Mystique and her wife Destiny are the equivalent, or not the equivalent, the embodiment of be gay, do crime.
I fully support this. Yes, be gay,
Yes.
do crime, but I feel like that's not actually. We're not. Wait, what do you mean be gay, do crime? Because hasn't Mystique been around for a while, and has Destiny been around for a while?
Yep.
Weren't they like
They've
hanging out with like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle or Doyle, whatever that man's
Conan
name is?
Doyle. Yeah.
Yes.
And Mystique and Destiny are actually the inspiration in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler. Yep. During that
The
era,
woman.
Mystique was posing as a male detective,
Mm-hmm.
and Doyle wrote his stories based on the adventures that Irene and Mystique were having.
I mean, on one hand, that's cheating, and on the other, that does kind of like make sense about how it is that he was able to like work a whole bunch of other stuff out. But Mystique is also like bouncing around all over the place beyond the Irene Adler, because like she how do you fake your death when you got bored of Sabretooth? It's
Well,
just
I
like
mean, with Mystique, she is a survivor. She will do whatever she needs to. And her and Irene have always had a little bit of a open marriage. They've
uh
both pursued other relationships and all that stuff and had been
yeah.
married to other people. Mystique, arguably, probably more than Irene.
Well, she was apparently legally married to Professor X when he died. Mystique
Yeah,
specifically.
there's still questions about the canonicity of that. And then she had like her hookup with Sabretooth that resulted in Great and Creed of the Friends of Humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Evil Professor Xavier Jr. with Mystique and Xavier, a evil
Separate from
child with
Cassandra? Like, is this like some sort of
Cassandra's
like
not
Cassandra?
Xavier's.
I thought Cassandra's like her, like the evil twin or something. Is
Yeah,
Cassandra Nova not
Cassandra Nova's Professor Xavier's evil twin,
right?
but Mystique and Xavier in an alternate timeline had a child together, Charles Xavier Jr.
And this child is evil.
Yes, and then there is Razor is Wolverine and Mystique's child.
Okay, I knew that there was there was some kid out there that they
Yeah,
had.
yeah. Razor is a blue Wolverine essentially.
That is not somebody who blends in well.
Nobody really cares about Charles Xavier Jr. Razor, honestly. I haven't heard anybody talk about them in years.
Poor guys. I'm sure they're off living their best lives or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, let's be honest. The most important Mystique children are always going to be Nightcrawler and their adopted daughter, Rogue.
Yeah, I feel like there's a certain amount of bias that you have because of the amount of blue paint that you wear, but you know.
Well,
I could be wrong.
I'm just saying if you were to name Raza in a conversation among Mystique's children, no one's gonna know who he is. But if you mention Rogue or Nightcrawler,
You know what? That is fair. That is fair. I will completely get behind you with that. But something that I will not get behind is how Marvel is not as free with their queers as I would like them to be. Looks like their first gay kiss was in 2001 with Bloke. He's an X-Force character. His government name is Mickey Torque, and his under-publicized boyfriend. If we
yeah,
find out what his
I
boyfriend's name is in the future, we'll let you know. But
I
he
did a deep search and I could not find anything about what his name was. Just that he lived in San Francisco and
Yeah, so most people think of like the kind of first like gay relationship to a certain extent of when Shatterstar and like Richter shared their feelings for each other in nine. You know, Wiccan and Hulkling are a very well regarded married couple in the Marvelverse.
arguably the most recognized and beloved couple. They're the ones that are basically friends in almost every Pride issue and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Their marriage has honestly become it's not one of the first marriages, but it's one that has resonated a lot with fans.
Yeah, but even with that, like so like when Loki was on Marvel TV, he's also canonically like he's gender fluid, pansexual, multisexual, however you want to describe it, omnisexual honestly, because I'm pretty sure that in Norse mythology he hooked up with a horse at some point
Yeah,
and
but it's
ended
hard to
up
say if he did that in the MCU or not.
how many legs does Odin's horse have? If
Yeah, but
that horse has eight legs, that's Loki's kid.
maybe not because they kind of change the mythology sometimes on these stories, so we can't be 100% adhered to the canonicity of the original stories.
Okay, well, I
It's
mean,
the same
even with
thing with like Wonder Woman mythology. It's like the actual myths do not necessarily match what they tell in the stories.
that's fair. But what I will say is that with Loki, even with him being gender fluid, gender like, multisexual, whatever else, they gender swapped his variant so that it ended up being a hetero pairing. Yes, they inserted like the queerness in like the train conversation the two of them had. Ultimately, just like they kind of barely acknowledge that like their
Uh-huh.
queer characters are doing like, queer character things.
Yeah,
And
no, that's an unfortunate thing. It's like Marvel in the comics, I know a lot of the writers really wanted to get queer characters in there a lot earlier.
mhm,
I mean, like we said, Chris Claremont alone was trying to get Kitty to be bisexual, trying to have a lesbian relationship with Mystique and Destiny from the start.
mhm.
You know, a lot of creators really want to have stories involving queer characters, and it was ages before North Star became the first like openly queer superhero, with only being predated, I think, by like as a primary character, Captain America's best friend Arnie, a Jewish queer, you know, friend of Steve's from pre-World War II. Yep. And it's, the movies and TV shows, on the other hand, have struggled a lot to give us any kind of queer representation. I mean, our first officially queer character was, and I'm not including that guy from the Endgame who was in the support group. That guy didn't even
Yeah,
have a name.
that's a self-insert guy. He's called grieving guy in the thing,
Yeah,
so
he
no.
didn't have a name or anything like with the main characters. It was nice to
Yeah,
see that queer people existed, but that wasn't anything. But we didn't get until the Eternals with Fausto, Faust,
Fastus.
Festus. Thank you.
Festus.
I cannot remember how to pronounce his name, but yeah, it's like he was the first officially queer character, and then like you said, Loki was just basically a slip into the conversation. Honestly, our queerest representation so far has been Agatha all along, where we got the introduction of Wiccan himself, Billy Kaplan,
Yes.
and he has a boyfriend who allegedly was originally supposed to be his future husband, Teddy Altman, but they changed it to a guy named Eddie instead because I don't know.
I mean,
And
Eddie, Teddy, it's nice to let the boys grow up though a little bit though.
yeah,
They're like what, 18, 19 in the show, so
yeah. And then you've got, Agatha and Rio, Death herself.
that was an amazing relationship.
So Marvel has been trying.
Are they
They're still in the mindset. I mean, I said has been trying because I know the people behind the scenes have wanted to have more stuff. But
Yeah,
that doesn't
see,
mean that the people who are running the company are allowing them to.
yeah, Marvel was doing its best, but DC, on the other hand, DC has had John Constantine hooking up with himself and Lucifer Morningstar and Zatanna. Nick Nolan, aka Nick Necro, is Zatanna's ex-boyfriend and John Constantine's ex-boyfriend. This is a multisexual. Fuck.
Yes, he does.
So
He
let's.
is the central manho of DC, I would imagine. I mean, that man, men, women, demons, he's down to play.
So for his
And
formal
shark men.
introduction, what? Look, you know what? He's up for whatever works. Okay, for his
They
formal
have two dicks.
two. How
Sharks have two dicks. So
I already knew
he's
about like
he's hooked up with King Shark, at least according to the animated movies. And if King Shark's got any kind of like true shark anatomy in that sense, well, boop, boop, boop.
all right, so his legal government name is John Constantine. Oh my God. This man was created by Alan Moore, Steve Bissette, and John Totalben, which honestly, Alan Moore is a whole separate conversation in and of himself, but
That man is a genius, and I fear him.
he's terrifying, and I want to just kind of listen to him talk and then not. And Constantine's first appearance was in Swamp Thing number 37 in June 1985. Wow, this guy's been around for like 40 years and has been stripping everybody as soon as he came along. But yeah, how is he hooking up with everybody? Like an alternate universe version of himself and the Lord of Hell? How does that happen?
I mean, it's John. Logic means nothing to him.
See,
It's
this
magic.
guy's.
You don't have to explain it.
See, when they say omnisexual, this is the kind of thing that I think as being omnisexual. Because again, generally speaking, I'm not going to be upset if a human and I are getting together and like I pull down their pants, but I'm not prepared to handle a shark.
He
I'm
was.
not. Exactly. I feel like he can truly call himself omnisexual.
I still want to know the backstory of how they met.
I mean, I want to know how it is that John was able to sit there and be like, hey, let's do this thing. And then they kept doing this thing for like didn't they date for like a minute? They
He
dated for
called
like
him his ex, not like a hookup, an ex.
exactly. So, like John Constantine has a substantive pile of love interest, shall we say. Like
Mhm.
it's a lot. It's kind of a slut.
Not kind of. He is a slut.
You know what? That's fair. But yeah, so that's one of the things that's kind of worth noting is that like really DC is a lot more like to a certain extent they're a lot more like direct with making sure that their multisexuals are having multisexual relationships.
Well, to be fair, also, a big difference is like when John Constantine was introduced, he was not introduced into the main line.
Hmm.
He was part of the vertical line, which was aimed more for adults.
That's fair.
So that was part of the reason why he could be as much of a whore as he was, because of the fact that he was in a story where he was allowed to be sexual. He was allowed to pursue different relationships because they weren't worried about the kids.
Hmm.
Less people were screaming, "Won't someone think of the children?" Because people would be like, "Why is your child reading this?"
I mean, people give their children all kinds of things. There are a number
Yeah,
of
but
TikToks that I've
these
seen
ones,
about like the wrong anime getting given to the wrong child.
yeah, but these ones were like, if you even just like flip through it, the nudity alone was like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't be giving this to my 5-year-old.
I'm sorry, you're what? Oh my God. Oof, no, because five is like I feel like a 5-year-old has like just figured out that like bodies are supposed something that like we have
Well, that's because I was
privacy
saying
with.
most people would be like, you're not supposed to give this particular book to the kid who's like reading a comic book because they just finished watching Batman the animated series.
No, Starfire is not for small children.
Yeah.
She's lovely, but not for small. Not comic Starfire is not for small children.
Comic Starfire was fine back during the day.
Back during the day,
Her
every time I see.
costume was a little bit revealing, but she was still written as it was still Comic Code Authority, so there was limits on what they did with her.
Yes, but I have seen other things after the Comic Code Authority has
Yeah,
loosened up a
well,
little bit. So
let's not delve into the new 52 because they messed up Starfire bad there.
you know what? I will take it. I respect the fact that everybody can't be.
Speaking of Starfire,
Hmm?
that is another queer character.
Starfire Square?
100%. Her species doesn't have hangups on gender and sexuality. On her planet, love was love. Sex was welcomed by all. Physical contact, affection, all that stuff. They didn't have hangups.
I did not
They
know that.
just,
That
yeah,
is super cool.
they just never really played up on that because again, Comic Code Authority
Hmm.
and but the writers at the time, the creators Marv Wolfman and George Perez were not afraid to show that on her planet love was welcome. It was even implied a few times that her and Raven could have had like maybe romantic interests if Starfire hadn't been with Robin at the time.
You know what? I fully support this, mostly because I'm sorry, Robin and Starfire are cute, but Raven and Starfire seems like that is like
That could
that
have been
seems
the
that's an April and
proto
Andy right
Harley
there.
and that would have been like the proto Harley and Ivy relationship almost.
Well, speaking of Harley and Ivy, so we're speaking of specifically Dr. Harleen Quinzel, who was created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. And unlike most characters in the comic verse, she actually originated in the animated series Joker's Favor on September 11th, 1992. 1992, she came around like 9 years beforehand, but Harley Quinn has dated both the Joker and Poison Ivy, and I'm pretty sure that we all know which relationship was healthier for her.
Yeah, there's a very low question about that. Although
Like,
some more modern comic writers are kind of like putting a wrench in that, but
wait, what do you mean they're putting a wrench in that? Like that's one of her big non-Joker relationships.
yes, but they've done some stories that I think the Pryde issue that recently came out kind of implied that her and Ivy are on the outs right now, and that there was some kind of like drama. I haven't read it yet, but I saw a couple clips the other day.
Okay, well, I mean, people break up, things happen,
Yeah. And
but
the thing is, with Harley and Ivy, part of their relationship that made it work for them was the fact that even though they are very much in love with each other, they also realize that their lives take them in different directions. Harley is largely in a journey of self-discovery and improvement. She wants to be a better person than she was before. Ivy, on the other hand, has her, eco-terrorism that she has to, that she
yeah.
really is passionate about. She wants to save the world and all that. So they will go in their separate directions. They will have other lovers, but they will always come back together.
Yeah. And like
Unlike the
honestly,
Joker, who is a toxic Mother F.
as long as she comes back, like I'm good with her coming back together with Ivy. I'm not good with her coming back together with the Joker. And as long
Hmm.
as they're like both happy and consenting to the part where like they wander off and come back together, monogamy is great for some people and it's not great for everyone.
And considering the, chaotic nature of Harley and Ivy's lives, it makes sense that they'd probably, be into the whole traditional romantic relationship.
Yeah, it's really kind of hard to be. Plus, to a certain extent, Harley is competing for Ivy's attention with literally every plant that grows anywhere ever. And much like Emma Frost, having like a sexy affair with Cyclops in his head, I imagine that Harley touching on a plant a little bit too hard might make Ivy be like, "Hey, hey, what are you doing?"
I kind of imagine that Ivy would be more concerned about Harley accidentally killing the plant.
You know what? That's fair. Didn't Ivy make sure to like make Harley immune to all of her various like toxins and things of that nature?
Yes, she did.
So that's nice. That's really sweet.
Hmm. And they did that before they even started dating.
See, that is a beautiful couple right there. Like they laid some groundwork and they made things happen. That's super cute. Um, and we have a couple of other like canon bisexuals hanging out in the DC verse. So, we already talked about Tim Drake, the bestest Robin ever, as far as I am given to understand. There are other
Well, as far as
Robins
I'm
that are
concerned, that is my favorite.
yes, that is
Although his coming out story was, I would argue, could have been better handled. And I won't place the blame on the writer of the
mm-hmm,
book. I will place the blame on DC for not giving the story the time it needed to breathe.
that's fair. I mean,
Because as a budding young bisexual character, Tim Drake unfortunately kind of got a rush job on his coming out story.
mm,
He didn't get like I mean, he was dating a spoiler, Stephanie Brown
mm-hmm,
at the time, and they broke them up off screen with
yeah,
Tim not even telling Stephanie why they were breaking up.
that's
They had it
rude.
to where they introduced his new love interest, who was a character that had not been seen in almost 20 years. We did not really get the Tim starting to question himself story. We kind of met him when he was like halfway through, like almost the final foot out of the closet.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one where it's like if they'd given him like an entire solo miniseries,
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably would have been a better story for him and probably also would have made his partner Bernard a lot more of an interesting character.
He and Bernard are sitting there being all cute together, right?
Yes, they are often drawn together being very cutesy and adorable and perfect couple goals.
And
But
Superman's
it's
son, Jon Kent, is seeing Jane Nakamura. Like,
Yep. Another young guy who his previous relationship was Saturn Girl from the Legion of Superheroes, and now he's with Jay, and they are another really cute couple. But thankfully, Jay got a little bit better time in the spotlight to develop.
that's fair. So, yeah, it looks like the two of them are getting a chance to actually kind of exist. Well, I mean, honestly though, like all of the DC like queer characters are getting to actually sit there and be actively notably like queer, it seems like.
More or less, I mean, it comes in waves where
Mm,
characters will be there, but then there'll be times where they kind of like disappear for a while.
mm,
Several of our favorite sexual characters. Tim Drake is not regularly appearing in a solo series or a team book. He is kind of at the appearance of Batman books or other characters
mm,
as a supporting character. John spent a little bit of time out of the spotlight along with Jay.
mm,
It's only recently that they have been kind of given a bit more focus over in the Secret Six book,
mm.
which is written by the Supergirl's Dreamer.
Wait, what?
Yeah, the actress who played Dreamer on Supergirl.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to remember her name. God, I'm blanking. She is so sweet and
On Supergirl.
oh God, why am I blanking on her name?
Let's find out. Hang on, hang on. Dreamer Supergirl actress Nicole Maines.
Nicole Maine, thank you. I met her recently at a con. She is so sweet. And Nicole is currently writing the Secret Six book where her character, who is a trans icon, a dreamer,
Mm-hmm.
is part of the Secret Six along with John and Jay.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this is so
But
I'm a big
yeah,
fan
but
of DC being more open with this kind of situation.
But the thing is, it's like as open as they're trying to be in the comics, like I say, there's still the struggles because we haven't really seen Batwoman in a while. Obsidian, who is one of the earliest DC gay superheroes, is another character who's kind of only like minor supporting roles.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Scott, who recently came out as gay, is gotten his own solo series, but it's only a short-term one, so
Mm.
and they've struggled in the TV shows. They have
Yeah.
introduced several gay characters and stuff like that, but a lot of times they were, just supporting characters. They weren't given a lot of like main focus all the time.
Yeah.
So DC and Marvel, they are doing better than they were before, but there's still a ways they can still go.
I mean, the comics code is making it so that people can't do stuff, and I respect that the same way that like the Hayes Code made it so that, a lot of the representation that we had, when movies first came out was very negative, but I do like the fact that we are able to grab and snatch at representation without it necessarily being something where we are automatically like it's doomed by being, who you are. Being able to actually just like have
Yeah, just
representation matters.
tell that to some of the people on the internet.
There's a lot of people on the internet who are embarrassing, really, really actively embarrassing. There are people who don't know what pronouns are and think that saying that they don't know what pronouns are is a flex as opposed to a sign that you missed a class in fifth grade.
Hmm.
So, anyway, before we get too shady with the various people who are out here in our American constituency, we're going to take a quick break. Welcome back. So, as we wrap up this beautiful, beautiful June, the week ahead is going to be a super busy one in the DC and Marvel universes. Wait, how do you know? Well, DC Comics has put out a whole calendar with canon dates for all kinds of birthdays and events. And Marvel has actually put out for their 80th anniversary a big list of their canon birthdays, events, and things of that nature. So we have a number of things that we are celebrating the anniversaries of. So we have the introduction of Hartley Rathaway, aka Thomas Peterson, and Henry Darrow, the Pied Piper. We are shouting out that the Winter Soldier's identity was revealed as Bucky Barnes in Captain America.
Spoilers.
Oops. Wait, isn't Bucky Barnes one of is Bucky Barnes a multisexual, or is that just a tease?
It's a tease. I mean, nothing has been officially ever, established with him. All anybody knows is that during Captain America films and also the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show, there was a lot of like baiting there. The couples counseling, the thing where they intertwine their legs while they were talking to each other. It's like, we know what you're doing, Marvel. And
Yeah.
it was
Look, the important part is that if we don't get it, we have other people that we can look to, I guess, in theory. As we just discussed, there's a whole bunch of other canon bisexual. Okay, whole bunch. There are other canon bisexuals who are out there in the Marvelverse and in the DC verse, so it's fine. So we also have this week the anniversary of when Ultimate Peter Parker died heroically saving his family and friends in a battle against an out of control Green Goblin. And in that Spider-Man universe, that's where we get Miles Morales. So that is very cool. But
Yep,
the
Miles is a great character, and seriously, I can't wait for the next Into the Spider-Verse. Come on, Sony, hurry it
yeah,
up.
well, I mean, do you think Shamar Moore has stopped trying to hit on Haley Steinfeld now that she's married?
Uh,
That man was thirsty. That man was embarrassingly thirsty.
I
It's
didn't even know that
fine.
was going on.
Oh yeah, oh no, it was a whole thing. People low-key thought that he was crashing out whenever she announced her engagement, but this man was simping for her hard, and she was like, "No, thank you." But
Oh,
yeah, no,
awkward.
she got married sometime recently. So, yay.
Well, good for her. Congratulations.
Congratulations. But honestly, the most important thing that's popping off is that Ironheart will be coming out on Disney Plus, or actually, as we are standing now, it should already be out. So make sure
Please
you
watch it,
are
people.
watching the show. It is important. Ryan Coogler knows what he's doing, even if he's not necessarily like the person who is doing the step by steps of all of these things. Go watch this movie. You will not be mad. You won't be mad. I haven't even looked at it yet, and I know I won't be mad. Well, actually, no, they could make me mad. They could How could they make me mad with Ironheart if Ironheart decides to sit there and be like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm gonna go to Wakanda and be like really self-conscious about myself because I am unable to do what they can do as Wakandans. I'm like, lady, aren't you at MIT? Didn't you create like the vibranium discovering machine that got you in trouble with multiple kingdoms? Like, ma'am,
Yeah, but that'd be writing her very out of character.
look, I worry sometimes.
That's fair, but I feel like the way that Riri is written in these things, she's close enough to her comic book counterpart where she's just like, do I look like somebody who has fucks to give? No, that is not me.
I mean, she was ready to try to fight Ao, which, not Ao, Okoye. She was ready
Mhm.
to fight Okoye.
Yeah, you gotta
Didn't
give props
necessarily
to some.
realize that Okoye could probably like wreck her face, but she was ready.
Oh no, she knew Okoye was gonna could wreck her face, but that doesn't stop her from being like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go down fighting.
I mean, that's fair. Being a black girl who's going to MIT is a lot because it is cold in Massachusetts. I have in-laws who are up there and it is cold. I do not like being that far north in the winter. I'm not a huge fan. But,
Don't you live in
everything
New
is not for
York now?
everyone. Yes, but that is still further south than Massachusetts. I get slightly less
I'm.
snow. It's enough. It's a
Uh,
4-hour drive up to Massachusetts. I have to pass through Connecticut. I see the WWE building whenever I'm like on the highway and I look at it and I'm just like, Linda McMahon should not be in charge of even the building that she had, but that's neither here nor there. So,
okay.
yeah. So, what this means though is that listeners, we have come to the end of our podcast. I know, you're clearly devastated about this. And it should not be over so soon. But guess what? Our next episode's coming out on 4th of July. We're going to be talking about the only,
The man with the plan.
the Star-Spangled Man with the Plan.
America's ass.
Yes, we are going to be talking about Steve Rogers next week. But since that doesn't come out until the 4th of July, you are, of course, more than welcome to listen to this and our old episodes if that doesn't come fast enough. So, Nerd Cred does take some time to build, but
You stepped on my line again.
I am a line stepper. That's how I live my best life. I don't know. I rolled a higher initiative than you did, okay? All right?
You just forgot to pause, didn't you?
That's
There
neither
it
here
is.
nor there. Here's what matters. What matters is the fact that we have an Instagram. It's at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. We
And
are
we're also on
Apple.
Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and working on expanding our reach. If you have burning questions that you want us to discuss so you can up your nerd cred, make sure to like and subscribe, leave comments, and we'll pick your questions. We'll shout you out at the end of our discussion segment.
Aside from me being a bit of a line stepper, I'm also encouraging you to make sure that you get your friends to like the podcast and also subscribe, and any of your family members that you want to have subscribe, or like your coworkers that you trust not to be weird about listening to the same podcast as you, and
And good night, everybody.
Ba 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 ba.